Yanni Valley Science and Letters Academy. It has been 22 school days since our last prank. Miles Murphy pulled the fire alarm on Monday afternoon. He did it on the way back from the bathroom. When the hallway was empty and nobody was looking, there was a little red lever. When Miles pulled it, lights flashed, blackens blasted, and sprinklers sprinkled. Miles smiled and let himself be drenched. Soon the hallway was filled with students, younger kids walking hand in hand, 2 by 2, the bigger kids moving in clumps. Teachers shouted, doors swung, kids laughed, everybody got soaked. It was wonderful. Miles found his class and sidled up to Niles. Miles nodded. Niles shook his head. "This is crazy," Stuart said. "It's like an indoor rainstorm." He held open his mouth to catch some of the water. "Gross, Stuart," said Holly. She sniffed the air. "I don't smell any smoke." "That's because this is a prank," said Stuart. "I can feel it in my bones." "Somebody's gonna pay," said Josh. "This is getting my sash all wet." "Well, really it's my sash," said Niles. "I made it and..." "Quiet! This is an emergency! You're supposed to stay quiet during an emergency!" Josh shook his head at Niles and wrote something down on the clipboard he was carrying. "What are you writing?" Miles asked. Josh shook his head at Miles and wrote something else on the clipboard. "You can't even read it," Miles said, looking over Josh's shoulder. "The paper's all wet." Josh underlined something on his clipboard. The pen tore through the sheet, and his underline smeared into a big red blot. Near the front office, they passed Gus, who was covering the first grader's cow with a tarp so the paper mache wouldn't get soggy. "You kids look like you went swimming," he said, and waved. On the front lawn, students gathered, grouped according to class. It was a gray day with a breeze that raised goosebumps on Miles's wet skin and made him feel alive. Teachers took roll. All students and staff were present and accounted for, except for one, Principal Barkin. They waited. The thrill of the interruption dissolved, and boredom crept over the crowd. Teachers stood holding first aid kits, looking slightly lost. Miss X led the first graders in some sort of clapping game. "I wish we had a frisbee," said Stuart. "Know what I mean?" Nobody knew what he meant. Then the front door opened. A man in plaid emerged. It was Principal Barkin, dry as chalk dust beneath a black umbrella. Bertram Barkin strode over to the flagpole, shook the water from his umbrella, and collapsed it. "Children," he didn't need a megaphone to make himself heard. Barkin swung the umbrella, pointing its metal tip at the ground. "I will ask only once. Will the student who pulled the fire alarm please step up to the flagpole?" "Ma," said Stuart. "Somebody is in trouble." Kids looked around to see whether anyone was stepping forward. Miles scratched behind his ear, begged to yawn. "A shame," Barkin said, "but unsurprising." He removed a medal from his pocket and dangled it before him. "I was looking forward to handing out this school citizenship award." "What?" said Stuart. "An award for a prankster?" Miles frowned. This was odd. He looked at Niles, who stood still, staring, blinking. "Prankster?" Principal Barkin looked at Stuart and smiled. "Oh, no. This award is for a hero." "This is so weird," Stuart said. "Know what I mean?" Everyone knew what he meant. "Stuart, let's embrace this teachable moment," said Principal Barkin. "Pulling the fire alarm is a prank, and a rather crude prank at that. Only when there is no fire." "But there wasn't a fire." Bertrand Barkin looked perplexed. "Of course there was, Stuart," he said. "There was a fire. Luckily, it was contained. The only thing lost was that wonderful papier-mâché mascot the first graders made for our entrance. Burnt to a crisp. Most unfortunate." Miles' throat tightened. "But we just saw that cow. That cow was fine." "All right, students," Principal Barkin said. "Back to class. Today's school day, after all." He turned and slowly walked back toward the building. When he reached the first step, he paused and removed a small box from his pocket. He turned it over his fingers once or twice, then replaced it. "No way," thought Miles. "You must have seen that wrong." "Are those matches?" Stuart said. "Man alive," said Miles. When the kids went back to class, they walked by the charred remains of the Yawning Valley Science and Letters Academy bovine. The burnt cow was still there at the end of the day, mostly just a pile of ash next to a sign that said, "Yawning Valley Science and Letters Academy. It has been 23 school days since our last prank." Project 11. Hand turkeys. And that's the end of chapter 16.